Alright, hey YouTube, this is Shiny Chaos, and we're back from part 1. That's right, I'm trying something new today. I'm going to essentially cut out the period from where I get out of the starting area and into the, wow, that was pretty damn seamless, and into the fight with Blagonga again. Just skipping all the, get my stamina back and all that jazz. You've seen it before, you've seen it 1,000 times. Alright, so, I don't know. I kinda don't know what really to talk about with this. So for a bit I'll give a couple of reasons why I don't feel that this greatsword is a great weapon of choice for this particular fight. For one, it's just really slow. You don't get to use the primary strength of the greatsword, which is that charge hit. I mean, it still does a lot of damage. It's still pretty alright, but when that sword's out, you still move like molasses. Your rolls are, I think, a little shorter. The attacks are still fairly long. The fact that to move at an accurate speed, you have to sheath the weapon again. I mean, it's a slow weapon, and anyone who uses greatsword or tried it out really knows that. And Blagonga is kind of the opposite of slow. He's very fast. See me just fail hitting a prey, holding the unsheathed button a bit too long, getting a charge. And you'll see a lot of examples of me trying to do what greatswords usually do in fights, which is charge, and trying to get charges on situations where they have to kind of turn their vulnerable spot into you, and to go for the stagger, which makes them safe. And just Blagonga doesn't care. Blagonga does give nothing. He just either backs out, he back hops out, or side hops out, or whatnot. So this fight just does not play to the strengths of the greatsword. If you are having trouble with Blagonga, the weapons I would suggest, Sword and Shield is a very safe approach. The only issue with it is while it's safe, it takes a while, because Sword and Shield has very low damage, very low DPS. It'll certainly be able to, finish the fight off, but it's not something that's going to finish it off fast. And if you're having trouble with it, that gives you more time to actually mess up and die. But that said, it does have a fairly good block. Doesn't get blown back terribly bad by his things, and the stuff that you would take a lot of guard damage through, you can usually avoid. That would be the big clothesline charge. Yeah, see me right there failing a sword charge, or the belly stomp and stuff like that. So I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it. Dual swords, I honestly haven't used enough to really give a recommendation for it. They're certainly fast enough and high damage enough to work in this fight. The only issue is dual swords, unless you're a pretty proficient user in them, most fights are pretty hard. So yeah, he's limping 3 minutes into the video, 3-4 minutes in the video, and he's still not gonna die for another about 7 minutes. Yeah. I make some errors here. So while dual swords could certainly do it, I don't know if I would recommend them for anyone having trouble. I'm primarily a hammer user, so this might bias me on this, but I do like the hammer versus him. You get that high damage weapon and that high damage skill. You're not going to get a lot of triple pounds. You're probably going to have to relegate that to when he's concussed, obviously, and probably you can get it during non-rage ice blasts, but I doubt it. If you're not directly behind him, it would be pretty safe, because he can't just back kick into you, but there's always the chance that he turns and knocks you out of it, or he jumps out of the triple pound, leaving you with a butt ton of recovery. So you're not going to get a ton of triple pound chances unless you really know the fight. But the super pounds For those that don't know the terminology, super pound is when you hold the R button on the PSP version to charge the hammer till its last level and release it without moving. Fairly easy to sneak in. His head is not terribly hard to hit. It is fairly vulnerable, and it takes a lot of concussion damage too. Lances and gun lances. Actually, for the dual Blagonga, I do believe I gun lance tanked it, but this was in Freedom when you could get guard +2 fairly simply from the hermitaur set. I don't know if it would work as well in this game. They're both fairly do it. The only big problem is the problem with the weapons in general is that they lack mobility, and they are more lacking in mobility than the greatsword. So the caveats I gave for using a greatsword for Blagonga, yeah, see, this is what primarily the strength of the greatsword is getting them big charges on the vulnerable area of the monster, and you see me get some really good hits in right here. But it's very rare to get this kind of thing on Blagonga. He's usually not so obliging. But yeah, with the lance and the gun lance, I mean, it's definitely certainly doable. You'll have a very strong defense. You'll definitely probably want to bring guard +1 at the very least, because you're going to be kind of immobile, and you're probably actually gonna have to block those clotheslines unless you sheath up right as he backs out the way. Because he usually doesn't. Well, actually, no, he'll do them pretty close to you too, but they're usually aimed wrong. Or you're gonna have to get really good with backstep, using the backstep evasion. At least on the lance, it does have the biggest frames of evasion without the evade plus skills in the game. Longsword would actually work pretty well. I will admit I was a longsword quote-unquote noob when I first started playing this game. Longswords do work fairly well early game. The problem is at this level, no, you'd have the Kezu. You'd have the Kezu one. You wouldn't have the upgraded version of it, and for the life of me, cannot remember what it's called. I'll check later, and I'll probably post it in the description. But it is very mobile, at this level, it's pretty good DPS. The reason a lot of people don't like longsword is, one, in multiplayer, they're very disruptive. Every single one of their attacks will hit other players and knock them out of whatever they're doing. The other thing is their attack really just doesn't scale well. Their damage per their DPS is good early on, but the later ones aren't as good. The end tier longswords aren't as good as the end tier of other weapons. Sort of like the sword and shield. They are just there's something else that's supposed to make up for the DPS, and unfortunately, in the longsword's case, it really doesn't. At least in my opinion. They're still fun to use, but not too much later on. But right now, yeah, especially since you can kind of get away with a very easy armor set with them. You don't have to really. I mean, earplugs would work really nicely here, but at this level, if you have an earplug set, you probably you could have the hermitaur set, but I would not recommend that for a Blade Master. It's very low defense, very fragile. I know. Actually, I don't even know if the earplugs are on the Blade Master set. I know it's on the Gunner set, but. In any case, I mean, it's certainly not needed. The Scream, even in Rage, won't get you hit by anything. And more often than not, one of the minions will try and knock you out of your stagger animation. But yeah, Hunting Horn, I don't like Hunting Horns. Especially solo, where you're just giving yourself the buffs. I mean, and especially this early level, there isn't really good Hunting Horns this early on. Obviously, feel free to disagree with me. If you have a good early Hunting Horn that you would want to recommend, feel free to leave it in the comments. But they're clunky. They don't do as much damage as a regular hammer, and I don't know. I don't like them. So while it may be your taste, obviously the best weapon for you is the one that you're going to be able to use the best and you're most familiar with. I can't recommend them to people who are trying to get this fight when they're having trouble. It's not a weapon that you can switch to and do immediately very well with. Yeah, other than that, you're about to see one of the reasons I do like the hammer and the greatsword, the big upfront damage dealers, and also a very funny, in my opinion, part of the AI, which I did not think would happen. I'm crouching here because crouching does reduce. I'm not exactly sure what crouching does. Supposedly it's supposed to reduce your noticeableness to the monster. As you can see, I got spotted right before I left, and when I come back into the area I'll be spotted. And it looks like he's aggro on me, except if you watch, he limps and then falls asleep. I find this really funny. So I clear out the regular Blango, and then I do what every greatsword user and every hammer user loves to do, and that's just end it with a big fat fatality style hit. Sleeping modifier is, I believe, 3 times damage on the first hit, which if you got a greatsword, that full charge to frickin' 3 times damage, you can do some things with that. Actually, there's a couple videos of someone somewhat abusing it. I think they had to hack in sleeping throwing knives, and they like utterly destroyed a higher rank Rathian. Well, looks like this video is almost over, so I will catch you guys on the next one. See you later, YouTube. Late.